discussion has a long title, but basically it's how do you explore AI in a rapid and responsible way with all of the capabilities that are out there. So, okay. No, that's okay. That's fine. Alrighty, great. So let's start with this. Anne, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone? Tell us, your what you do and a little bit about your background.
Happy to. Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Ghrini. I am CMO at Sierra Ventures. Sierra Ventures is an early stage venture capital fund. We invest at the seed and A stage. I have a hybrid role, both as a lot of my role is helping our portfolio. So helping them with everything on the go-to-market front and then also marketing our brand and sitting on the investment team. Prior to moving to venture capital, I was an operator for years, all venture-backed startups. So I live and breathe in this kind of AI world.
Great, Brent. I know people have met you earlier this morning as the keynote. Anything you want to add to?
Yeah, so CMO for Emeritus Life Insurance Corp. Our company's about 138 years old. We're split between our kind of life insurance wealth management side of the house, and then our group, which is our dental, vision, and hearing. It's about fifth largest in the country there. So
yeah. Great. All right. Fantastic. So very timely topic, AI. You're well versed in it, and actually this morning you mentioned that you developed your own LLM. I thought that was really interesting as well. So there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of talk about what should you be looking at, what you shouldn't be looking. Let's start with that. How do you sort through all of that noise when you're hearing all of the promises and what it can and can't do? So, Anne, let's start with you.
I think the number one thing that everyone needs to be doing today is testing. I think that, I've always said in how we train our portfolio companies, whether they're founders or the CMOs within them, you should think about what's working. And that might be 80%. A lot of you are in legacy companies, and that might be 95%. Whatever that percentage is that you can risk, you should allocate time to testing what is new, learning what's out there. If you are not part of this wave, you will be left behind. Your job will be left behind. How teams are constructed is changing completely. So not having this knowledge is a huge disadvantage. But the good thing is there's so many resources that are available, and so many of these tools are actually easy to use, unlike tools of the past. So getting out there, allocating some time to just testing the tools that exist. And there's, yes, there's a landslide of new tools that are coming at any given moment, but just going out there and trying new things and trying to learn as much as possible, I think is just crucial.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that as well,
I couldn't
Brent?
agree more.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's critical to let your associates play. And I mean, that's how they're going to learn. And I mean, we handled it in kind of two phases. One was, as soon as we could, we allowed all of our associates to get out there and use all the publicly available tools. We had to make sure they weren't kind of bringing any of our data into it, right, and make sure that was protected. And then as we stood up our own LLM, it really became incumbent upon them of, you need to teach this thing. You need to take some responsibility to start using our data to actually start working on business problems inside of it. That's how it's going to learn.
Yeah.
Right, and so they kind of had both sides. We're an AWS and Microsoft shop, so it's using Copilot, it's using those in their everyday business kind of needs. So it's really been kind of a driven by the associate standpoint, and then I think leadership really getting behind saying, there's expectations here. I know within our department, I've got about 70 people in our department. Every one of them in their goals this year has utilizing AI to kind of improve their job function. In there, they've got to show demonstrated use cases that they're using to make their job somehow better. And so we've got teams that are pushing all of that through, educating each other around what's going on outside of our walls in there, and then starting to kind of move those through. And it's not with, there's some fear out there, right, from people,
Yeah.
but allowing them to kind of control that has helped mitigate that fear.
So part of that fear, if you will, there's the people worried about their jobs or not learning fast enough or what have you. But then we work in very regulated environments, right? Financial services are very highly regulated. So there's that other fear, the risk and the regulatory constraints that we have, or parameters that we have to work within. How do you think about that? How have you been able to navigate it? Has it been a challenge? And maybe Brent, I'll start with you, since you were just talking about that fear.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns out there. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about the regulators, and you've got kind of your national regulatory bodies, but then you have each state
Yes.
that we have to deal with.
The
And states are
DOI.
handling things differently. I mean, you get, the state of Illinois has kind of said no on a lot of things in business applications because they worry about bias in the models. And there's good reasons to worry about some of those things when it comes to underwriting and some of the rules that are in there. And so you have to be really careful. They don't like the idea of a black box, right? Which is how they view a lot of this. And so, every state's going to have some different kind of things we're going to have to navigate through. A lot of education has to happen. They're still finding their footing. So I think there's a real push by the industry to do as much education and advocacy as they can while they're learning here. We'll see where this goes. The administration plays a large role in this, and kind of what they're allowing regulators to do and not to do here. That's still a bit unknown how that's going to kind of fall out. So we're kind of preparing on both sides of the fence. Insurance is very conservative.
Yes, it is.
Overall. I kind of feel like our legal department has kind of said, go learn as much as you can learn. We'll worry about mitigating risks where we can. Let's put it to good use, but be thinking about things, even from a marketing standpoint, whether it's images and voice and video and things, and what about bad actors, and how are we going to write, disclosures, and how are we going to think about, what if they take an image of the CEO and they put a voice behind it, and they put an outside actor puts that CEO in a compromising position that is not true, but suddenly gets out there in the world. How do we think about that? What kind of insurance is there against that? There's lots of kind of things that we're going to be wrestling with.
Yeah. And thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the key overall, something I always like to talk about, is adoption requires adaptation. You cannot adopt these tools without adapting your workflow. And as marketers in the room, a lot of our roles also include internal communications as well as external. So working with leadership to establish that framework about how you test these different tools, about how your team uses it, about how your team safely uses these tools. And sometimes we step back and look at the news cycle and everything seems radically different, but a lot of this has been going on for a while. Just think about the Chrome extension. How many of your teammates have downloaded a Chrome extension with not fully thinking about how much data you're giving that company access to? These are things that we need to be teaching when we think about L&D within our organization. We need to be teaching this from day one of onboarding. Like, if you download this Chrome extension, they get access to everything that you search. I worked at a startup. I was an advisor for a company years ago that was a Chrome extension, and it literally blew my mind and is now like imprinted in my brain of how much we could see all their search traffic, everything they bought. So we need to educate our teams better about what they can use. We need to have a workflow. I love what Brent said about having some KPIs associated to it and then learning from each other, because there is so much out there. And if you construct some ways that teammates, we do this with our portfolio because a lot of them are early stage founders, how can we get them together to learn from each other? Hey, what's the tool that you just used? Oh, I used TextBlaze. It was awesome. It made my day way easier. I use Superhuman, I use whatever that is, Podcastle, Grammarly. We should figure that out, and then when you pull that in, management can also kind of take an eye on like what's approved by the CISO, the CIO, and everyone else at the larger organization. So we just can't think, we need to test, we need to try, but we also need to adapt how we've been working and have that in the back of our mind, that our team is going to be using these products. We need to teach them how to use them safely.
So you mentioned, others that are using and talking to them. Do you think agencies have a role to play in that? There are a lot of agencies that are touting, the big ones, the small ones, that their ability to help you filter through the noise and get you the right tools. How do you think about that as a source?
It's funny because in the venture capital world, the narrative is agencies are dead. Services as software. Agencies are gone. There will be no agency. Contrarian view to that is I use AI tools. Every day I am testing a new tool. Here's the reality. They go 80%, most of them. There is like a wonderful age for agencies in the next few years. I don't know how long it'll last. But there are so many tools that can superpower an agency to be, and with fewer people, to be of superhuman power and to really help companies that aren't able to learn about the hundreds of different tools and options that are out there. So I think agencies are going to play this really interesting role in the evolution of AI in the short term. I don't know, if we're accelerating at the pace that we are, I don't know what that ends up being in the future. The reality is, as I use all these different tools, I don't know, how many people in here use Clay? Anyone?
I don't know that one. No. Oh,
Yeah.
one.
Phenomenal tool. We didn't invest in it, unfortunately, but phenomenal tool. You need a degree in Clay to understand how to use Clay properly. It takes time. It's not every marketer is going to have that time and capability to become an expert, and that's where agencies can come in understanding, hey, this is one of the best tools to use. I'll help you use it. I don't need a team of 10 to do it now. I need a team of 1. Instead of how many people have hired an agency and you talk to the managing director and then you get an analyst that just got out of college that's your day-to-day person that's running your account. That happens often. Now maybe that shifts a little bit where you're working on agencies help more on strategy and the actual doing is done by AI. So long-winded, but I think that agencies are going to have a really interesting role in the next few years. And then as things evolve, we'll all have to think about what happens to our jobs. But yeah.
Brent, how do you feel?
I think Ann said it really well because I was kind of on that side of where I think agencies we've seen the end of, but I think she said a couple of things. One of her earlier answers, she said she talked about adapting, right? And I think agencies will adapt. I think also, kind of adding on to what she said, where they have an opportunity to kind of play in these next few years are with some larger organizations who have to deal with bureaucracy and do technology due diligence, and it's a really long process, right? So I don't get to play with all the little tools, all the new things that are coming out. I don't have time to look at them. My people don't have time. I need them kind of doing work. And IT does not have time to look at the universe and scan through everything. We already have way too much technology that we need to be sunsetting, quite frankly, and kind of rationalizing our portfolio that we have, not heaping on more that we're going to have to manage. So agencies give us the ability to actually step into them and saying, listen, I need you guys to go out there and start playing with these things and sourcing them, finding them. I may, at the end of the day, take that over where it kind of works and maybe not, but if you can do that for me, that really frees me up from having to kind of worry about that, especially on some of the small tools that may or may not be here in 3 or 4 years. Adobe may buy them up, they may get subsumed by some other platform in there, but that's an opportunity, I think, for agencies here in the short run.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned IT, and I love IT, but to me, they are IT professionals. They're not marketing professionals. So even when they're vetting, like I'm always saying, well, that's my canvas that I'm going to use. I need a marketer to be able to tell me whether this is the right canvas or not. So an agency, for example, would have a role to play in that rather than IT.
And that's really well said because we have had, we've been playing with kind of text to voice AIs. We found one we really liked. We could create nuances and breathiness and all these other different things, dialing up and dialing down. And they wanted us to use one that was off the shelf that came from one of our old providers in our IVR system. And we're like, but you don't understand. It doesn't give us the... And they're like going, stop being so creative. It'll work just fine. I'm like going...
Well, what do we do then?
I don't have to hire voice talent anymore. Yeah. I've got this. I can do it in 30 minutes what took me a couple months of going through, hiring voice talent, doing all these things. I can do it now like that. Yeah. And so it was just it was just kind of another thing. But IT was being IT. Well, we already have this. It's off the shelf. It works. And it sounds like it's off the shelf, guys, and it's 10 years old. So
exactly.
It does become IT does IT, and they do IT really well. They don't necessarily meet the needs of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I feel like I've had that conversation many times, but and now even more so. Now, we talked a little bit about you're testing a lot. You're using some. Is there pressure, and are you able to show the value of? We talked a lot about that yesterday. Marketing always kind of showing the value of what we do, and to get funding, to get support, all of that. With the adoption of new capabilities, of new tools, are you also able to measure and show?
I think now more than ever. So when you're testing, yes, it's going to be hard to measure, and so that time just is, I count it as L&D, and you got a learning development. You just need to be doing that. But I think with the tools that are available, similar to Brent's point, there are tools out there that just make our lives 1,000 times easier, and it's happened in this very condensed period of time that when we talk about AI voice. So it was playing with a tool that changes accents for call centers. And it is the coolest thing, and one that's noise cancellation. So if people are still hybrid or working from hotel lobbies, which I'm sure you guys are this week, reducing and eliminating all the background noise. I have a little Jack Russell / Beagle, and he started howling next to me while I was on a call, and no one else heard it. And then you just wow, this makes working so much easier. Content creation on things we used to work with I have a podcast, and we do videos with that. Used to work with an agency, and pretty freelance, not that expensive, but a couple $1,000 here and there to help edit and make the videos and the snippets and all the little pieces. Now I upload that into Podcastle, and it immediately makes it so easy to choose the background music, add subtitles, edit it myself, share it with my team, and just with a couple clicks, I'm able to get there. Now, don't believe AI any AI tool that says it's 100%. The best AI tools that I've seen get you I don't care if it gets you 70 or 80%, but then gives you the controls to go in and manipulate it the way you want it, especially for the larger brands in the room. But the value is really obvious, because when I go and say, hey, I just produced these 6 podcasts myself, which would have cost us, we're a small firm, but it would have cost us $5,000, and I did it for free for $129 a year. Or Canva, all these tools that are available, it's pretty obvious. The cost savings is crazy. So I think that's where, if you're able to show that, people start to, even IT or the CISOs, the chief know officers, they'll start to perk up when they see the amount of savings that you can provide by leveraging some of the tools that are available.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to talk about. So we came to an enterprise agreement on it, because we all got excited. We want to say, well, it's going to reduce this much in hard dollars, or we kind of said, listen, this is still so early on. Let's come to an agreement as an organization of expectations kind of year 1.5. And so our agreement is by the end of this year, 2025, we will have saved 100,000 hours across our enterprise.
100,000.
So, and we're
That's
on track.
Significant.
Well, so we have a chief AI officer who was our old CIO, who's on his way to retire, and we moved him over there, promoted new CIO. And so, and he and I are good friends, and he wanted to say 200,000. He's an old consultant, and so I kind of said, dude, you cannot go into the board with that. So we're at 100,000, and we're on track, and
That's
we'll hit
amazing.
that this year.
Yeah.
And then we'll start talking about, well, what does that translate into actual dollars and growth of either not having to expand FTE, right, that we're doing, or things that we're actually be able to convert into other things. On the marketing side, a lot of it is a time savings and capacity play. We're doing more, right? We're actually faster on things. Over time, I'm not going to have to grow the organization as the enterprise grows with things in there. So, but that's just going to take a little bit of time.
Sure.
Is there an expectation? We've been very direct as an executive team of saying, let's be really clear with each other in the room. Are we saying we are going to reduce headcount?
Yeah.
And the answer has been, we expect to be able to be at least 50% larger than we are today at the same head count we are today. So that's the goal. It's not to reduce head count.
Stay neutral, headcount
It's to be able
neutral,
to kind of
but
get the,
improve
it's to be able to get the
productivity.
unit cost down.
Right.
Now, will the kind of architecture of the
Change,
roles
yeah.
change?
Yeah.
The geography
Yeah.
of things change?
Sure.
Probably. And so there's a huge talent strategy that we're having to go through as an organization of
Very
saying,
interesting.
how do you start to take some of these roles that you think you're going to need to upskill and change? How do you re-architect your call centers
Yeah.
to offer? I mean, if you look at the dental business, it's highly transactional, right? You have calls for claims coming in all the time, right? We roll through classes, it's a high turnover area anyway. Well, I won't need as many new classes coming in, but how do I take the people that are in existence there and how do I start to change that job such that they look at that as career path going through there. I'm going to have them do other types of things. That's kind of how it's going to spend a lot of energy there because we don't want to lose those people. We want to find ways to upskill them.
Right.
It'll take a few years to prove it out.
Can I ask you a question, Brent? Just because this comes up so much, in your organization, because you work at a large enterprise, how often do you have the conversation or at the leadership level where you're discussing what about the next generation? Because I think about this. Yes, if we're not changing headcount, what about, I don't know, our kids are in grade school, but like if you have kids in college who are graduating, like, or kids going into high school, like, how are they going to get that entry-level job? Does it exist?
It's a great question. I talked a little bit about that earlier this morning. So it's a struggle right now, right? I'm going through actually a lot of retirements in my area. People have tremendous amount of tenure, huge amount of institutional knowledge, and I struggle with this layer of kind of junior level, call it first 3 years of kind of a person's role. That's going to get automated. In some cases, some of that's going away pretty quickly in the next 18 months.
That's true.
How do I jump over that? Right? They're not coming out of school with those skills. They're coming out with these skills. And I actually advise in our business school at the University of Nebraska, and I've actually asked the professors and asked the department, how are you guys handling this? And I get a lot of, well, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, don't ask me, I'm asking you. There, and we were at Columbia University. We had the same question at Columbia, and we were like, guys, you guys need to be thinking of this. We're depending on you guys to help us answer that, or we got to rethink this whole system of whether it's certifications and knowledge bases, and because it's going to be a problem. And so the way I've taken it is I'm filling those holes. I'm overlapping those holes with interns that we're filling up into full-time jobs, and we're putting them on accelerated paths. So they're kind of riding along for up to 9 months, and then trying to get them to accelerate up so I can get them past that gap. Because I'm scared, quite frankly. I'm going to have this huge gap, and it's going to be everywhere.
It is, the traditional role in a lot of, at least in the tech world, is if you want to get into sales or anything on the revenue side, you start as an SDR or a BDR, and you work your way up. I did it for 6 months. It's not a fun job, but you learn so much. And now, the AI SDR, BDRs are still, I say subpar, but they're getting better. So if that role gets eliminated, if the junior marketer gets eliminated, we do need to think about how maybe the entry-level role is almost 90% L&D, and it's training. But it's just, as a society, I do believe that that's like one of our biggest.
Yeah, it's interesting the conversation I had with the university, though. I would have thought naively. My son graduated college already, so I'm not really thinking about that. But I would have thought that the universities are also changing kind of how they're teaching and what they're teaching, because
We
they're.
could spend a whole day talking about it.
Yeah, it's
Because then you ask the
fascinating.
universities,
We should have
what
a-
tools are you giving them?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't actually have the money to give them all co-pilot licenses. You're not giving them, you don't even give them the access to the tools for them to actually learn this stuff. They're having to go home and learn it.
Yeah.
And we advise a class every spring in the business school. I'm like, how many of you guys are using generative AI? I said, how many of you guys are using it on your homework? And they all look at the professor. I said, don't worry about him at all. And they're all got their hands up. And he's like, well, you guys shouldn't be using it. I said, no, all of you use it.
Yeah.
I went to UC San Diego, and I work at the university now, And it's really cool to see that they are building these innovation programs, and some of them are departmental, and there's a whole innovation lab, and there's something called the basement. There's actually a demo day this afternoon, which is pretty cool. And where they're kind of just like, hey, it's a test ground. It's a place, because you need that availability, whether you're going to go be a founder or you're just, the entry-level job is going to change so much in the next few years from what many of us in the room remember. So yeah, I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly been around long enough in marketing where there were jobs that didn't exist when I was 25 years ago. There were certain roles that just didn't exist that now have become kind of staple and I think we're going through that evolution now again, where there are roles that are simply, prompt engineers, or these didn't exist before. And the question is, are we going to find the talent to do that? Or, I love what you said, is an entry-level job really a time for L&D and to get them up? Now that costs us, obviously, as an employer to do that, but maybe that is how we start to think about it.
And then the optimist to me is that they will come in and they will change us.
Yeah.
Right? They'll come in with a whole different kind of knowledge base and technology utilization base, and they will actually force change us.
I always learn from my teams. I've always learned from them, and I think, yes, that there is that as well.
So what we are seeing in companies, so we have a CXO advisory board, so Fortune 1000 CIOs, CTOs, and then we have a engineering product leader council, so equally like more mid-market and expanding companies. So I get to talk to all these different people about how they think about hiring today. In the startup, in the tech world, you are asking questions. What tools do you use? Whether you are a coder, they want to know, have you used Cursor? Have you used Devon? Like Windsurf, what are you using today? Like, what's your stack? As a marketer, it's going to be the same thing. If you go into a job and you say, and they ask you, like, what tools are you using? And you say, well, I use HubSpot and I use spreadsheets. Like, would you want to hire that person? No, like the next hire that you have, they're going to be like, oh yeah, well I built out this entire workflow on Clay and it's so cool because it enriches and then I can do my personalized outbound and I built an ABM campaign and here's what I'm doing on the customer side. I put just all my videos in Pogcastle and now I can create video content and social clips and your head will go, I mean, it might be intimidating, but that's the person I want on my team.
Absolutely.
That's the person who's going to be working at a 10x level as opposed to someone who's manually doing data entry into HubSpot. That role's gone. So that's why I think it's crucial for us to learn and to have those like tools that you become experts in. And I think it's really important at the university level what we're telling you should go out and be the expert because you can find a role. I was recently at a dinner with a bunch of operating partners and most of them came from private equity and there's this idea of like an AI czar within firms that I think is really interesting. So you have a chief AI. You
mentioned a chief AI officer.
Which is pretty common, or usually AI data or something of that. This is a different role. This is someone who is like out there in the latest tools. So in the insurance space is changing dramatically because now we're able to, multimodal, being able to pull in documents. We can actually, everyone who's got insurance gets that stack of paper. Can you change that? You guys are sitting on an incredible amount of data. So there's a lot that's happening where you want someone who's on the forefront. All of us want someone who's on the forefront, looking at all the latest YC companies. What are they doing? What are they building? All the latest early stage companies that are getting funding, and just playing and testing with it.
Yeah, and I love the idea of a chief AI officer and not being. I think I understood you correctly. That is not the chief technology officer. It's a separate role.
It's a separate organization.
Yeah,
we're building out. So.
That's really interesting. No, that's great. We're almost at time. Great conversation. Any last question or any questions before we hop? I think it was great. Well, thank you both so much. Great conversation, sometimes scary, sometimes promising, so thank you. And I just wanted to tell everyone we are heading into a 25-minute break now, so